For most of my life, I thought being an environmentalist meant you had to be rich, white, and live in the birds. So recently, I took a trip to the other side of the tracks to learn more about one urban community that's taking its place at the forefront of the green movement. We're here in the South Bronx to meet with environmental justice pioneer Majora Carter. Majora's been working the past 10 years to revitalize this once forgotten community through education, empowerment, and a whole lot of heart. Born and raised in the heart of the Bronx's Hunts Point neighborhood, Majora grew up faced with the challenges of urban decay. After becoming an attorney, she returned to her old stomping grounds and founded Sustainable South Bronx, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing the environmental and economic rebirth of the South Bronx. We caught up with Majora on the site of one of her most successful projects, the Hunts Point Riverside Park Initiative, right on the Bronx River, which cleaned up a blighted illegal dumping ground and transformed it into a green oasis and outdoor recreation area for the local community.
It's actually a fairly new park. I actually spearheaded it back in back in the late 90s, right when my community was fighting against a huge waste facility. And our job was to try to think of well, what else can we do? We're a poor community of color. We've got a lot of environmental burdens. The city was still trying to push a huge waste facility down our throats on our waterfront. Even growing up in this neighborhood, that there was nothing but industrial facilities on our waterfront. So it never occurred to me that we could do a park. And lo and behold, at the end of the weeds and piles of garbage and all sorts of crap was the river. It was this. And so if you didn't look behind you at the garbage, and only looked at this, it was I didn't even know this was here, in my own neighborhood. And I went back and wrote.
And you grew up here?
Yes, exactly. Because we were so defined by the negative things in our community. It actually is such an amazing educational model right here, because you've got so many different types of ecosystems that only occur at the mouth of a river like this. And but most importantly, I think that when you look up at the park that's here right now, it looks like it's well used, after school programs or whatever, even on a day that looks like it's promising to rain, folks are still here.
As an African American in this movement, it's fascinating to see that there's so few of us.
Yes.
And what do you think is the reason for that? And then secondly, what would you say to encourage more people of color to step into, finding a role that they can play?
There are plenty, of African Americans in particular in this movement, but they don't see themselves as part of the bigger mainstream environmental movement. And many of us, I certainly felt alone for the longest time. What's happening now is that, and this is where I'm really happy about the way that we've communicated ourselves. Just my presence, Van's presence, is two Black American folks who are doing this kind of work has inspired lots of folks to come out of the closet. Right. And that's why, I would say to all those young folks, including all you watching this thing, be loud and bold and be out there, because we also want to be there to support you. And we can't do it if we don't know you're there. Right. But I think that, people understanding that that this is different, from the mainstream environmental movement. It is I totally, in many cases, feel really marginalized. I still feel that way.
Me too.
And it's kind of oh, that's environmental justice, but this pure stuff over here is the environment.
All the classifications.
Yeah, and I'm well, your polar bears you're really concerned about. The reason why they're having such a hard time is because communities like this, that are point sources for greenhouse gases, that are not real pretty, that you don't want to really put any kind of emphasis and focus on, we're point sources for those greenhouse gases.
Right.
If you actually bother to look really deeply at the way our economy has been supporting this kind of development, and really looked at what is the impact of global warming, you would say, we got to start there. You don't go to the end. Right. You go to the point sources, and that's how you impact change. And even though I can talk about that till I'm blue in the face, and I do, I've not really seen the environmental community responding like that. So I can sort of understand why folks feel like things are going really slowly, if moving at all.
What would you say to people at home who are watching and want to do something, want to take a step, and want to be a part of the movement? What would you say to encourage them?
First, understand that they are the movement. Don't discount that. I mean, this is part of our legacy, and we have to acknowledge that and embrace that, and not be afraid to say it. You know what? Before there was slavery, I'm sorry, there we had
A cultural tradition.
Thank
that
you.
involved nature.
and now we're just like, oh no, we got a park. We have a little front yard. We're gonna pave it over and put a car on it. Like, why? You know, no, baby. It's like, let's
Get back to Mother
I
Earth.
know, it's ours. You know, that's our mother.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk for a minute about environmental justice. I know it's something that obviously affects our communities tremendously, given the whole socioeconomic rationale. For example, in my neighborhood, on one side of my block, there's 5 houses in a row. People have died of cancer. How would you go about sort of taking action on something like that, assuming there's something that's even actionable?
If there is like already a community that is alarmed by it, that's huge. Going to, I mean, not that it always helps, but going to your elected officials, making sure they know, and then putting it out to the media. You know, I think that's always an incredibly helpful thing, especially if, you know, you just look organized. You don't really have to be, but it is the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. I mean, really, I gotta tell you, part of it is just getting out there. I mean, look, all I did was like think hard enough and crazy enough that we could actually do something like this. But other folks joined on, and for that I'm eternally grateful. And that, you know, believe me, there were some folks like, all right, there's this crazy girl, we don't know, she ain't got no kind of environmental background, and she don't know what she's doing, like she's been gone for years, I know she's from around there, but whatever.
Right.
But you know what, let's just see.
She's back.
Yeah, let's just see what happens.
It is common sense, but just seeing an example that it can be done, and it can work. Right here. Living example. So thank you. I gotta give you a high five, sis. You're the bomb, girl. You're the bomb. For more information about Sustainable South Bronx, visit ssbx.org. Or to learn more about Majora, go to majoracartergroup.com.